Hey y'all, it's CJ and Mike here for Book World: The Great Escape, and you're talking to me live from Livingston, where hopefully you can still see me. Can you see me, Mike?
I can, but you're frozen right now. Your image is frozen. But I can hear you.
Did we lose Mike?
I'm still here.
I hope we're still here. Mike, can you hear me?
I can.
Mike, can you hear me? Okay, try again.
I can hear you.
There we go. Okay, now we're back. Yeah. So I can't do anything on my phone then because my phone is tethered to the hotspot that's creating this whole broadcast. So I'm here. We have a special guest with Delilah is here. And Trevor's going to be getting in here in a few minutes. So we're going to have all sorts of people here today. So, Mike, how is your day? How was your weekend?
We had a great week. Melly and I were at the Northwest Arkansas Comic Con in Rogers, Arkansas, which I discovered is the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States. Did not know that until then. Anyway, the AvCons does the Northwest, the NWA Comic Con, and it was Saturday and Sunday, and it was awesome. Sold a bunch of books.
Yay!
Oh, I sold more books, I guess, at any Comic Con I've been to so far, and got to meet a lot of people. It was cool because they always have guests, actors and actresses from TV shows and movies, past and present. And across from us was a couple of the original Power Rangers. But right down from us was some of the Cobra Kai actors and actresses, which are currently running, is it on Amazon, streaming on Amazon or Amazon Prime, or is it Netflix? I don't remember. But anyways, got to see them.
Netflix has the new Cobra Kai.
Yeah, and these were the actors and actresses from Cobra Kai. And we also got to see the Ninja Turtles march, back and forth. They were all there. Raphael, I never can remember them all.
Donatello,
Leonardo,
and I can't remember the fourth.
Well, we never can remember.
Is it bad that I know that?
No. But anyway, it was really good. We got to see a lot of people, got to sell a lot of books, and get in touch with the people that read your stuff. And I ran into some people that I'd saw at some other Comic Cons that have read my books, and they were coming back for some of the others. So it was awesome. Yeah, it was really good.
That's always pretty cool. So today we're going to be talking about inspiration for characters. Speaking of characters such as the Ninja Turtles. How was that for a segue?
There you go.
So you can get inspiration for characters pretty much anywhere. I was a counselor for a number of years. I was a youth group leader for 18. Talk about finding characters. We lived in all over the place. I grew up an Army brat. So characters can pretty much be found anywhere, to be honest. And when you find, there are certain ones where you find that one person that just absolutely fits it, that's ideal. And the funny thing is usually if they know it, then they're really super excited about it. But it's always, they keep telling me, they're like, you just can't kill me. Literally just like, I'll be a character in your book, but don't kill me. And I'm like, I can make it glorious for you. And they're like, no, you cannot kill me. And then sometimes you're only intending a character to be in one book. And they're like, no, I need to stay for the rest of this series, which happened to me as well. Has that happened with any of the characters that you've created?
As far as killing them off, or one character leading to another, so to speak?
Yeah, or they decide that they kind of take the reins and say, no, I'm staying.
Yeah, actually, yes. In fact, in the book series that I'm writing, the fourth and last book on Conquest of the Veil, there was a character in there what I had always planned to kill off. but
Mhm.
because she was such an integral part, an interesting part, as well as an integral part of the story, I decided that it was better to leave her alive than to have her killed. So, and with pantsers like ourselves, that's always an option. Since we are allowed to come up with different and new ways of saying or doing things, including characters in our books.
Definitely. So, what was the favorite character that you ever created that was based on somebody?
Well, I tried. I've been asked. I've been asked by people before, readers. Well, who is this character based on, or who's that character based on? And
Yeah, and
really,
they're not all based on people.
no, I try not to. I try not to base characters on a particular person I may have met or observed.
Mhm.
Instead, what I try to do is have characters who have the traits of people that I've seen or come across, and you sort of compile them together, and it's a conglomeration of those traits. I will
Mhm.
say in my first book, the first book that I wrote was The Treasure Hunt Club.
Mhm.
And I was in a fraternity, both as with my bachelor and as a graduate student. And I got to see and meet a lot of characters in that regard. And
Uh-huh.
there were some characters that were inspirations for those characters. There were fraternity brothers and people like that I'd met that were inspiration for characters in my first book, The Treasure Hunt Club, but they weren't strictly based on just their personalities or their identity, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
And I try not to do that simply because I don't think well, CJ, when you're writing a story, you've already kind of got an idea of the characters you want, and you apply to them the character traits that you find that fit into that character in the story. And um, I'd really I really don't want, I mean, for me, I really don't want someone, "Hey, I know that person," or that like I had
Well,
actually,
if you
you know
if you paint them in a decent light, though, that's not a bad thing.
No, no, it's not. But, when in my background, I was in public education for 38 years. And as I've mentioned before, there are very few more target-rich environments than public education. You get to see
Oh yeah.
students and parents and staff members uh, and community members. I mean, you get the full Monty, in terms of all the people. And another interesting place to go where you get to see virtually anybody and everybody is a mall.
Mhm.
A mall is full of people. If you sit down, which I have done on a number of occasions, sit down and just watched, and watch people go by. If you need some grist, if you need some inspiration for a character, you could do worse than a mall.
Yeah, I tell people I am a professional people watcher.
Right.
Growing up Mommy Brat, moving all over the place, malls, schools, youth leader, counselor. I mean, I'm a professional people watcher. And so it's like I love watching people. Fascinating. Walmart is a target rich environment
Oh,
for
yeah,
watching
there's another one.
people.
You're right about that. Yes.
And it gets fun. But sometimes, for example, and he knows that I did it. One of the security guards where we used to live, his
Mhm.
name was William Herman. I named his character Herman Williams, and he was a police officer in the Grace Restored series. And he knew it, and he absolutely loved it, and he loved that idea. Another one was there was this one kid in youth group, and he had the most eccentric personality, and I absolutely loved it. I'm like, I need to put you in this book. Is that okay? And he said yes, and got permission from his mom. And so he used his first name and changed the last name, but he knew who he was. And he was just, it was like too perfect of a person not to be put in a book. And he goes, "You can kill me. I don't care." I mean, he was that great. The kid, he was just like, "Yeah, you can kill me. That's fine." And I didn't. but he was the one I only intended to be in one book, and his character's like, no, I need to stay in here. Not him, his character's like, I need to stay in this entire series. And so when you can do that, and there were times like during the Divine Legacy series where I paid homage to certain fans that I knew, and friends, close friends of mine, a girl that I mentor, one of my husband's BFFs is in there, my mom's in there. And they're just like little things, like an 80-year-old woman was praying over her Bible, was praying during her devotions, and she felt that, or she was doing her devotions and had the sudden need to pray. There was a blind girl who was the kind of represents the girl that I mentor. And so she lay down on her bed and put her iTunes in to tune out the world, and she prayed. And so it's like different things, kind of just to kind of tip the hat to say, hey, I know you're reading, and here you go. One of them was a nurse in Ohio, and that's my husband's BFF, and she knows it. And so it's like when they discover that stuff too, and they call me like, I didn't know it was in your book. That's awesome. They get kind of excited about it. And so when you can do that, just kind of a little tip of the hat sometimes. Or another example was I had to interview 3 police officers for the Grace Restored series, where Katie McKenna was going to be a police officer. And for one of those, he gave me like a ton of stuff regarding the academy. And I said, I'm going to make you her FTO, her field training officer. He says, you can, but you cannot kill me. I said, seriously, I really need to. And he goes, no, if you're going to use me, you cannot kill me. And I'm like, fine. So, sometimes putting people that when they know it is kind of an honor. Another example is Eddie Hancock. We both know him. He's an author friend of ours. He actually is represented in the Sands of Time trilogy. His character's name is actually Eddie, and he's in a wheelchair just the same as Eddie is, for different reasons. Eddie's in it for spina bifida. This one is because he broke his back in a fight regarding the people with abilities. He got thrown and ended up going down the stairs. He turned out to be like one of the most powerful ones in the entire book. And so it's like when you can find somebody like that and just kind of almost empower them, it kind of gives them the boost too. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And you mentioned Eddie, and so when you have characters that that suffer from certain disabilities, and I have a character in the book Edison Jones and the Anti-Grav Elevator, and the main character is paralyzed from the waist down from a car accident at age
Mm-hmm.
5. So I'd met a mother of who had a son who had been born with spina bifida, who had looked at my book kind of like a beta reader, and she had made some suggestions about characters that have this disability and some of the things I'd said, which, like getting in and out of a wheelchair or something like that, that were not correct characterizations of
Mm-hmm.
how a person with that disability would react. So that was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think too, if you have a character like that suffers from autism or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, then obviously they would also have a certain, uh, you know, they would have the characteristics of what makes a person autistic or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main thing with whatever character that we as authors and writers portray in our books, they have to be believable,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to be someone that that a reader can either recognize or identify with. And if in such cases, it makes it easier to to read a novel or a book that we write, when they can relate to a character. So I think, yeah, you have to really make sure that. And the other thing too on that is that once you produce a character or characters for your book, don't be changing in midstream the characteristics of that person halfway through, so they're not consistent with the character that you have created. And I
Right.
think
I
that
have a
that's
rule of thumb that says never go against the character of the character.
right. And that's a
Mhm.
mistake, young people that are starting out, that are writers that have not done it for a while.
Mhm.
That's a mistake, of course, you want to avoid. Your character, regardless of what you base their traits upon, it has to be consistent across the board. Um, Otherwise, you'll confuse the reader, and it'll really make it tough to follow the storyline.
Well, and when you can find a character of, like, for example, one of my characters, she's a hacker that's in the Divine Legacy series. She's actually blind. And people are like, a blind hacker, is that possible? And her keyboard is a Braille keyboard. And she is quick, sometimes quicker than the keyboard itself. But when you can shine kind of a light on different, aspects that society says, no, they can't do that, and you can do it in a realistic way, it kind of propels them to kind of think, well, actually, maybe I can.
Right, right.
Like I said, there's that girl that I mentor that's blind, and she was kind of like, "Well, I'm really limited in what I can do," and I'm like, "Are you though?" I mean, some things legitimately you are, but if you can get somebody to rethink their world or rethink the world around them, or consider somebody who's in that position. For example, I'm night blind. My husband knows if we go out after dark that I have to hold his arm because I can't see worth anything. And so um, but I still go out.
Right,
You know what I mean? But I'm limited on what I can do and what I can't do to an extent. And when
right,
you can kind of shine a light on certain things, for example, Eddie in the wheelchair, um, Corey is the character that's blind. When you can shine a light on that, Katie McKenna went through a domestic violence situation with her dad, and she overcame that. When they can overcome their circumstances despite what's going on, that's always something that can kind of help somebody who's in that situation go, hey, and kind of relate to it and go, oh, cool. So I might actually be able to do something like that if I can find the
yeah.
right path to do it. It might
And
be harder, but they could still do it.
and you have to be careful about using cliched caricatures of
Hmm.
characters as well. I think that's an easy trap to fall into as well. And
Definitely.
it's but at the same time, as I said earlier, it still has to be believable. But
Hmm.
I do think that as far as inspiration of characters, you can find them any place and anywhere at any time. Um, the trick with, I guess, as a writer, whether you're
Hmm.
younger or older, is what do you do if you find, say, you see, like we mentioned, the mall. Let's say that you see an interesting person in the mall. For example, this has been a number of years ago. I was in the Longview Mall, and it was like March or April, something like this. And a young man came in dressed like Frankenstein.
Oh,
Okay.
geez.
I mean, literally like Frankenstein. Had the
Hmm.
boots, had the green, the green tunic, had the square head, and the electrode sticking out of, just, and it wasn't
And it
anywhere
wasn't
near,
Halloween,
it
or
wasn't anywhere near Halloween. I thought, but
okay.
it made an impression on me, which I guess is the point. The person was dressed like that. Individual was dressed like that. But I thought to myself, one day I will write a book that has a place for a character like that, walking around like Frankenstein in the mall. But I think you have to catalog these things somehow in your mind where you don't forget them. Now that's kind of an unforgettable thing, but
Yeah.
there's others, where maybe you see a personality trait or something that somebody does that strikes you as odd, and it would be a good idea to maybe write down
Hmm.
somehow. If you've got your phone, you've got a note app or something like that, to put it in there. Hey, I saw so and so on this date. This is what I observed, so that you can go back to that later and maybe
Hmm.
use that as part of the character.
Now, I mean, here's the beauty of when we grew up. I don't know about you. I was born in 1972. So actually literally growing up in the 80s. That's when all the punks, the skaters, the jocks, the
Mhm.
brains, everything was going on. And I was friends, I was not locked into one clique. I had friends in every one of the cliques. And so in doing that, it actually allowed me the opportunity to see inside, some cliques, so to speak, or some groups of people that some may not have otherwise had the opportunity to do so. For example, somebody who attended schools in the 1950s, generally there were two types at that point. There were the street ones, and then there were the preps. And so when you grow up in a more diverse, what's the word, diverse environment of people,
Mhm.
also growing up army bred, you grew up on the bases or around the bases, and you pretty much meet everybody of every race, creed, color, sex. And so you get to learn people at their core. So it didn't really matter what they look like on the outside, it's more what they look like on the inside.
Right.
And
Right.
when you can read a person at their core, the eccentricities can kind of make people unique. But when you can read somebody at their core and you can put that into a book to the point that the reader can read somebody at their core, that makes the story that much more rich. When you're
Right.
not staying here and you go down here and you find out, if you can get somebody to like your villain, then I consider that a win-win. If you can get them to
Right.
understand from the perspective of the villain why they do what they do, and we go, okay, he's actually not that bad. I understand his line of thinking. It's not great. It's not, not ideal. And, he should be going to jail for what he's doing, or get them mad enough that they want to throw the book across the room, which I've had people tell me that they've done with my books. And you can evoke that sort of emotion with your characters and somebody reading that, then you've gone way below the surface. And that's ideal what a reader wants. They want to know all
Right.
the ins and outs and all the feelings and not stay up here. They get enough of that in society. They want the below the surface stuff. And
So
when you find characters like that, it's
oh,
fun.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, in, pardon me, in, the, Conquest of the Veil series that,
Hmm.
I have, in the first book, The Open Portal, the character is a bullied the main character is a bullied teenage girl that has reached the point she wants to commit suicide. Well,
Hmm.
I've seen bullied kids, obviously, and unfortunately more often than I'd like to admit. And while,
You just sort of
you
shake the book
know
and go, "What is wrong with you?" I read
yeah,
that part. I'm like, seriously?
right.
She seems
But it
nice. Why are you doing this?
but this with bullying, every bully is not, when we talk about cliched, images and portrayals, all bullies are not equal.
Hmm.
All bullied victims are not equal.
Hmm.
They are each different in their own way, and you have to be very careful about how you portray them. The other
Hmm.
thing that I think about when I saw that, we were going to be discussing inspirational characters is to be very careful about, being ethnocentric in terms of who your characters are.
Hmm.
Growing up in New Mexico and Albuquerque, I had tons of Hispanic friends. My first girlfriend was Hispanic, and so to me, it was kind of I mean, I just thought I didn't know that there was a different way of seeing things, but if you have characters, you do need to try to have a mix of characters that represent your readers as well,
And watch
and
the characterization of the characters.
yes, as
Mhm.
well. But I will say, an interesting character doesn't matter whether they're black, white, Hispanic,
Mhm.
Native American, man or woman, girl or boy. Uh, they still have to be a character that is believable and that is
Mhm.
consistent with the story that you're writing. So
Yes.
the
Not
inspirations,
just tossed in there
no,
for good
no,
measure.
no, not like you're baking a cake where you put a little pinch of this, a little pinch of that, but
Mhm.
each character, even the minor ones, have a purpose, in your story if they should have a
Mhm.
purpose in your story. But I
Well,
do
and
try.
sometimes those minors turn into
Oh
majors at
yeah.
some, and they have their
Well,
highlighted moments.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you need to make sure that you know each one of those characters. And that's kind of where the pantser, I think, actually more or less kind of wins because we don't have to do like massive character arcs of every single character. If I did, I don't think I'd ever get a book written.
Well, look at the Marvel Comics, DC
Mhm,
Comics, the Marvel Universe. How many spin-offs of minor characters
mhm,
have we seen that have gone from, the minor characters to Superman or Batman or something like that to now have become their own, their have their own following. So yeah, that's a very important point that minor characters can become major. You just never know, and especially with Panthers, you have that flexibility.
mhm,
So take that, planners. No, I'm
mhm.
I'm just joking,
Well,
but yeah,
and I'm kind of an ADD OCD planner or pantser. So, I kind of get the point of Um, I can be in several different minds at once because my brain is
right.
used to multitasking like that. And then the OCD portion makes sure that that character is locked in. And so I don't go against the character of the character. And that is super, super important. People are like, well, that's just a cliche. And it's like, no, you know, if Trevor did something that was out of character and someone goes, well, I saw him do it. And I'd be like, no, I don't think so because that's not him. It's the same thing when when you're writing regarding your characters. If someone were to come back and say that character who's been like a squeaky clean person, sort of across the board, afraid to make mistakes, say they grew up in a home that was really tight on rules, you know, are they really going to go rob a bank? There'd have to be extremely extenuating circumstances for that to happen because
Sure.
that goes against the character of the character. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you understand that concept and get that, I think that helps a lot. And it also helps the reader because the reader's like, I mean, how many times you read a book and be like, no way that's going to happen? That can't happen. That shouldn't happen. There are safety protocols in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. If somebody read it that, happened to be in that same profession. So it's like, you have to do your research and do it
Well
well.
well, again, the inspiration for characters can come from any place and every place and in situations that you'd never thought.
Hmm.
That you could derive a character. And I guess as a writer and an author, you have to be on your toes. You have to be prepared to, if something strikes you
Hmm.
as interesting, you have to be prepared and ready to somehow catalog that so that later you can go back and draw upon your well of knowledge in regards to characters and not forget about it you know, um, or somehow lose it because, you didn't somehow list it in a way that, you could go back to. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
uh,
I mean, I've had it in dreams, and I've woken up and grabbed my phone
oh
from
yeah,
my
I've heard
adult
that as
history
well.
and
I've
wrote
heard,
it down. For example, in the Sands of Time trilogy, there are 27 kids, one for each letter of the alphabet, and they literally their names hit me in that kind of awake but not awake zone where your brain is kind
mhm,
of in that fog, and so I
yeah.
grabbed my phone and I just started texting my husband what the names were, and he's just got up and goes, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Just notes. Just ignore me. I will put it in the computer later." But,
And I don't
you know
I don't know if you agree with this or not, CJ, but I think the younger you are when you
Mhm,
start writing, if you're serious about being an author, the more diligent you do need to be about making sure that uh, you catalog, you list, you somehow
mhm.
mark the characters you run across in whatever walk of life you're in so
Oh,
that you
sure.
can go back. Because as you get older, and I speak as an older person, your experiences are much more diverse than a younger person. You've met more people, you've seen more things happen, and characters may come a little bit easier for older folks simply because they've lived more life.
Right.
So the younger you are, the more important it is to really pay attention and be on top of interesting characters and traits that you come across in your daily walk of life.
Especially if you're in high school and college. I mean, those are like target rich environments for finding characters because 'cause they're like everywhere from every portion of
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
society.
Yeah, I
And
can attest to
so
that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find them, just make lists of them. So we have just a few more minutes left. Next week, there's a scheduling conflict, so we will not be on, but we will return back the week after, which I don't have the date off the top of my head. But no book world next week. We will return the week after that, and we will actually be having, if I'm not mistaken, Patty Wiseman will be with us, and she will be talking about authors, whether you stay in your own lane, in other words, stay in one genre, or do you spread your wings? Personally,
Multi-gen.
I'm a spread wings person. People know I'm a multi-genre author, so I'm curious to see what she has to say. But again, look around. Authors, readers. I mean, readers can do it too, because we were all readers at some point. Most authors. I don't think I've found a single author that's not like an avid reader to begin with. And so find those characters, write a story for readers. Authors, there's struggle rich environment everywhere. You can find them, write them down. In the meantime, have a great 2 weeks. We'll return the first week, I believe, in April with Patty Wiseman to talk about whether you stay in your own lane, be a single genre author, or be a multi-genre author. In the meantime, stay safe. This is a lovely weather season. We'll talk to you later.